Did you know? Super Mario 128 was the last game Shigeru Miyamoto ever directed, or at least it would have been, if its development was ever completed. Mario 128's development has long been a controversial and confusing topic with lots of misinformation online. To clear things up, DidYouKnowGaming searched through hundreds of magazines, translated Japanese websites, and even got in contact with one of Miyamoto's top programmers, Giles Goddard, who shed some light on the project. Mario 128 wasn't just one game with a linear development, it was actually several prototypes by multiple EAD teams as part of one massive project. You might think that sounds unusual, but it's the same way Mario 64 was made. According to Goddard, this multi-prototype development process was exactly how all the other prototypes and games came into being at Nintendo EAD. So let's dig into Mario 128's decade-long development and set the record straight. At E3 1996, just after Mario 64's development was complete, Miyamoto revealed that a sequel was already on the way. Miyamoto said, "I couldn't put everything into Mario 64 that I really wanted, so we've decided to continue working toward a sequel, which will take about a year and a half at least." He later added, "The game is only using about 60% of the N64's hardware power, you see. There's really so much more we could do, so we decided to save those ideas for next time." Over the course of many interviews, Miyamoto explained that Mario 64 only used a fraction of the N64's potential because the tools and hardware powering it weren't made by Nintendo themselves. They were actually developed by American companies like Silicon Graphics Inc., who gave Nintendo instruction manuals written in English. As a result, Nintendo's Japanese programmers couldn't take full advantage of the N64's capabilities in its first wave of 3D games. According to Miyamoto, all that untapped power could be used to make enemies more intelligent, so in the sequel, the new enemies would react to Mario's attacks in more varied and interesting ways. Mario 128 would utilize more advanced lighting and special effects as seen in Ocarina of Time, a game that ran on Mario 64's engine but with 90% of the N64's power. Miyamoto also planned to take advantage of the all-new tech in the 64DD, the N64's disc-based add-on, such as the extra storage space from discs. Miyamoto frequently mentioned the 64DD's read and write capabilities, saying he was using the DD's read-write storage to make a whole new type of game. The DD's other big feature was internet access, which combined with the read and write function could have truly revolutionized 3D Mario. Another way Miyamoto wanted to revolutionize 3D Mario was by resurrecting Luigi, who was unfortunately cut from Mario 64 late in development. Miyamoto was determined to bring Luigi back to life in the sequel, but not just as a function of multiplayer. Mario 128 single player was built around the concept of controlling Mario and Luigi simultaneously. Miyamoto never fully explained the specifics, but presumably this would mean splitting up Mario and Luigi to hit switches and solve puzzles, while at other times working together to push blocks and combine their abilities in other unique situations. In other words, it probably would have been something like Pikmin 2 or Resident Evil 0, games where the player controls two main characters, sometimes together and sometimes separately, with the ability to switch from one character to the other at the press of a button. In early 1998, Miyamoto told reporters Mario 128 was in the middle of development and that he even had a prototype starring Mario and Luigi sitting on his desk. He jokingly added that the final game might have green box art in honor of Luigi. He also assured fans Mario 128 would be finished fairly quickly once his team dedicated their efforts to it, but first they needed to wrap up development on Zelda 64, which at the time was scheduled to release about 6 months later. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned, and 6 months of finishing up Zelda turned into a year and a half, leaving Mario 128 to gather dust on Miyamoto's desk. Development came to a complete standstill, mostly because Miyamoto insisted on directing the game himself. This was at a time when he already had his hands full supervising about 10 other games, including the Mario Artist series and Star Fox 64. Eventually it dawned on him that he had bitten off more than he could chew, and admitted as much in late 1998, saying, "The prototype of Mario 2 has been kept on my desk and remains untouched. Luigi and Mario are running on the display I have. Originally, I wanted to make make it for the DD system but haven't touched it because of Zelda. Maybe I could ask a different group to work on it for me, or perhaps we could make it a new system, but right now, I don't know. By now, Mario 128 had missed its opportunity to launch on Nintendo's first 3D console, and footage of the Luigi prototype was never made public, but Miyamoto wasn't ready to give up. So once Ocarina of Time was released in late 1998, he turned his attention back to Mario 128 with a flurry of new ideas. Development was officially switched from the 64DD to the GameCube, and throughout dozens of interviews, Miyamoto revealed bits and pieces about the new direction the game was taking. When Nintendo Power asked if Mario 128 would accommodate 2 players, he told them his team was actually exploring 4-player split screen. 4 tiny screens would require a new camera system, but Miyamoto assured fans he was up to the challenge. Nintendo Official Magazine and other reputable sources reported on insider rumors that in addition to Luigi, Peach and Toad would be playable as well. 2 staffers who worked on Mario 64 claimed Yoshi was scrapped during development and was planned to return in the sequel. Claims made more credible when unseen Yoshi assets, including a Yoshi egg and Wet Dry World, were discovered in Mario 64's internal data some years later. Starting in late 1999, Miyamoto began to express frustration with Mario's reputation as a kid's game. He originally made the character as a typical middle-aged man back in the 80s, but over the next 2 decades, Nintendo's marketing department gradually turned him into a more silly character aimed mostly at children. As a result, it had become common for Japanese kids to feel they'd grown out of Mario games by the time they reached middle school, so he declared Mario would stop using the peace sign or victory sign, even though it was considered Mario's trademark gesture at the time, and no more smiling and laughing for no good reason. That was kid stuff. Miyamoto made it clear that Mario 128 would have more mature graphics and a more grown-up Mario. He even granted a few interviews to Playboy Weekly to drive the point home, promising Mario 128 would deliver a fresh new experience. At Space World 2000 in Japan, Miyamoto finally gave the public their first peek at Mario 128. But it wasn't his old Luigi prototype. Instead, he showed off a brand new prototype directed by Yoshiaki Koizumi, who'd served as Miyamoto's assistant director on Mario 64. The game had 128 Marios running around a giant 3D game board, carrying blocks and pushing each other off the edge, and came to a finale when the board exploded into a giant pizza. At the time, it was presented as a tech demo called Mario 128, demonstrating the capabilities of Nintendo's new home console, the GameCube. But Miyamoto later told Nintendo Power and other outlets that even though certain elements of the demo found their way into Pikmin, it was still very much in development as its own game. Over the next few years, Miyamoto's team explored different ideas by co-developing 2 separate prototypes. One was referred to as the Mario 128 project, and the other was an evolution of the Space World demo called the 100 Mario's project. Meanwhile, Yoshiaki Koizumi was put in charge of a 3rd Mario project, which ultimately launched in 2002 as Super Mario Sunshine. Over the next couple years, Miyamoto continued to reassure fans that both Mario 128 projects were developing nicely, and one of them would end up as Mario 64's direct sequel on the GameCube. Now 7 years into development, Mario 128 was expected to have a showing at E3 2003, but the event came and went without Mario making so much as a peep. Miyamoto later claimed 128 took a leave of absence to prevent other developers from stealing the game's revolutionary ideas. He said, "With Mario 128, I have been challenging many unprecedented things not found in existing video games. These new ideas are prone to lose their freshness or to be imitated once they go public, so we must be extremely careful when we discuss such things. I have been feeling the pressure that I have to complete this project." He later told Electronic Gaming Monthly if he didn't show the game sometime in 2004, he'd consider himself a failure. But again, 2004 came and went. Updates slowed to a trickle until the following year's E3 when Miyamoto told reporters Mario 128 might not land on the GameCube after all. After not directing a game for 8 years since Mario 64, he also admitted he was struggling as the game's only director. Soon after, Miyamoto announced he was taking an indefinite break from 128's development. Over the next few years, his team continued experimenting and building new prototypes, but Miyamoto had clearly lost enthusiasm for the project. He diverted attention to his work as a producer, supervising the development of games like Twilight Princess, Wii Sports, and Super Paper Mario. Meanwhile, Yoshiaki Koizumi and the Sunshine team opened a new office in Tokyo and took control of the 100 Marios project. After After spending 3 months reworking the 100 Mario's prototype to take place on a planet, Miyamoto gave Koizumi his blessing to start development on what would become Super Mario Galaxy. To the disappointment of millions of fans, Super Mario 128 was finally declared dead on March 8, 2007. In his keynote speech at the annual Game Developers Conference, Miyamoto offered up a final status report on Mario 64's direct sequel, a game that 10 years ago he said would only take a year and a half to make. Simply put, Mario 128's gameplay, centering on 100 plus AI-controlled characters, became Pikmin, and the stage design became Mario Galaxy. End of story. After that, reporters stopped asking about Mario 128, and Miyamoto seemed happy to never talk about it ever again. However, the truth appears to be more complicated. 100 Marios, a project within Mario 128, became Pikmin and Galaxy, but what about everything else? The unused content from Mario 64, the Luigi prototype, and all the other prototypes his team tinkered with for over a decade. Some of the unused content, like Luigi, made its way back into Mario 64 when it was re-released on the Nintendo DS. The Luigi prototype possibly went on to inspire the end of the Cafe side quest in Majora's Mask, then later served as the basis for Olimar and Louie's campaign in Pikmin 2. Rideable Yoshis found a home in Sunshine, and the 4-player campaign co-op ended up in Super Mario 3D World. It's hard to definitively say what became of the more mature graphics, but the peace sign did end up getting banned from Mario Sunshine, as well as the Galaxy games. That said, it ultimately returned in Super Mario Odyssey. In the end, the only thing released to the public actually called Super Mario 128 was an event match found in Smash Bros. Melee. But little bits and pieces of 128 snuck their way into other games Miyamoto produced, and all those countless Mario prototypes like Sunshine 2 experiments on the Wii will probably go on to influence future Nintendo games in ways we don't even realize. Did you also know Mario 64 almost used a motion-controlled wristwatch as a controller? For more Mario 64 facts, click the video on the screen. Bye bye!